Council meeting of the 17th of September 2024, open at 6 p.m. We acknowledge the Woodjuk people, the traditional custodians of the land, and we also pay our respects to elders both past, present and emerging. May I ask everybody here this evening to make sure that their mobile phones are turned off or are at least on silent for the duration of the meeting. This meeting is being live streamed via the City's YouTube channel. Council meetings are public meetings and any information you provide shall be recorded and may be publicly accessible. The council chambers are not a parliament and parliamentary privilege does not apply. Elected members and staff risk being held personally liable if their comments are defamatory or breach any duty of confidentiality. Statements made during council meetings are solely those of the person making them. Nothing expressed at a council meeting can be attributed to the city unless it is adopted by a resolution of council. Elected members and employees must disclose any financial proximity or partiality interest they have in an item on the agenda and declare the interest at the commencement of the meeting or at the very latest when the item is about to be discussed. Financial proximity and impartiality interests are to be disclosed in accordance with the provisions under the Local Government Act of 1995. Elected members disclosing a financial or proximity interest must not participate in that part of a briefing related to their interest and must leave the meeting for the duration of the item. The confirmed minutes of a council meeting are the official record of that council meeting. Verbatim minutes are not required. Nevertheless, the City publishes a recording of the meeting. Recording of council meetings must not be copied, republished or reproduced without the City's express permission. We'll move on to item 2 at attendance and 2.1 apologies. We have an apology from Mayor Patrick Hall this evening and also Councillor Singh. At item 2.2 at approved leave of absence, Councillor Parkinson is on an approved leave of absence from the 24th of July to the 14th of October inclusive. At item 3, the disclosure of interest, I can see the Chief Executive Officer is just dying to press that button. Mr. CEO, could you please advise the disclosures that you've received?
Don't go off script, Deputy Mayor. Thank you, Deputy Mayor. In relation to item 3.1 on tonight's agenda, declarations of financial interest, I have received none. I have received a declaration of impartiality from Councillor Shen Sekon. In relation to item CO008 of 24, the item detail is the DLGSC or Department of Local Government Club Night Lights program, Willetton Reserve Sports Lighting. The nature of Councillor Sekon's association is she has a child. Her child is a member of the under-8s Canning City Soccer Club that utilises Willetton Reserve.
Thank you, Mr. CEO. At item 4, announcement by the presiding member, there are none. At item 5, reports of delegates without discussion. Do any elected members wish to present a delegates report this evening? No, we shall move on then to item 6, question time from the public. 6.1, response to previous questions taken on notice. There are none. At item 6.2, questions from the public. I open public question time at 6:04 p.m. The time set aside for public questions is 15 minutes, which may be extended if necessary. For recording purposes, please come up to the microphone, state your name and address, and then proceed to ask your question. If an answer cannot be provided at tonight's meeting, the question will be taken on notice and an answer will be provided to you at the next ordinary council meeting. In accordance with policy AD02, members of the public who have registered their questions with the City Administration shall be called upon in the order of which the registrations were received. Written questions will precede verbal questions. The City has received one question for tonight's meeting from Mr. Bill Green. Thank you, Mr. Green. Would you like to come up to the microphone and ask your question? Oh, we'll just get the microphone turned on for you just a moment. There you go.
Thank you, Deputy Mayor, councillors, officers. Look, my question is very short and simple.
Sorry, Mr. Green, I just have to ask you to state your name and address just for the recording.
I beg your pardon.
That's okay, thank you.
My name is William Barry Green. My address is 25 Flinders Crescent, Bull Creek, 6149. And I've owned a number of properties in the city of Canning and have great community service links for the past 60 years, more or less. Now, my question is really very simple. Does the city of Canning place importance on the matter of quiet enjoyment to residents who are in their own abode? It's as simple as that.
Ms Green, can I just ask in what context you're asking that question, please?
In the context of people being given quiet enjoyment of their residence.
Is that during a particular time of the day?
I should think it's 24 hours every day. I'm sure the rangers help out in this matter.
Okay, I will direct your question to Director Bride.
Yes, thank you, Deputy Mayor. Obviously, it's very difficult without the context, but the city does play a role in managing certain noise issues. So whether that be excessive dog barking or where devices or equipment are used that generates noise impacts in excess of the noise regulations when measured at the adjacent property. So we do intervene in certain noise issues.
Thank you so much. My question is answered, and I thank you for that. I must say, there's one thing I must say further, if you don't mind. In my 61 years of dealing with local governments, I have never in my life come across more welcoming, polite and efficient telephone answering than what I receive at the City of Canning. That is simply the truth. I'm a Paul Harris Fellow in Rotary, which demands that I'm always truthful, and I'm a Melvin Jones Fellow in Lions, which also demands that I'm always truthful. And I thank the City of Canning for the great service those people provide. It's exemplary.
Thank you so much, Mr Green. Your compliments are very happily received, and thank you very much for your service to our community.
Thank you.
Thank you. Do we have any other members of the public who would like to raise a question this evening? No, in that case, I will close public question time at 6:08 p.m. and move on to item 7, confirmation of minutes. The ordinary council meeting that was held on the 20th of August 2024, the officer recommendation is on page 2 of the agenda and is on the screen. Could I have a mover for that, please? Thank you, Councillor Kunza, and a seconder. Thank you, Councillor Bain. Does anybody wish to speak to the motion, Councillor Kunza? No? Councillor Bain? No? If anyone would like to not support the officer's recommendation, speak now? No? In the absence of that, we shall move to the vote. Thank you.
The motion to confirm minutes from ordinary council meeting held on the 20th of August 2024 has been carried unanimously with all 8 in favour.
Thank you, Governance. Moving on to item 8, receiving of petitions, presentations and deputations. At item 8.1 petitions, there are none. At item 8.2 presentations, there are none. At item 8.3 deputations, a deputation has been approved for Mr Stephen Johnston of Rossmoyne regarding Notice of Motion 01024, financial incentives to protect significant trees. Mr Johnston, please come forward and make your deputation. You have 10 minutes.
Thanks very much, Deputy Mayor. My name is Stephen Johnston of Delphi Court, Rossmoyne, and I'm speaking tonight in support of Councillor Kunz's motion. Thanks very much. For financial incentives that the City could offer to ratepayers who successfully nominate a tree on their property for inclusion on the City's Significant Tree Register. Councillor Kunz's motion seeks to help address in a very small but significant way the enormous handicaps we face in this city in just retaining, let alone expanding, our level of tree cover. The handicaps have often been stated, but are worth recapping. Canning has one of the lowest levels of tree canopy cover in Perth, which in turn has the lowest level of tree canopy of any Australian capital city. We have a drying, hotter climate, which killed many established and newly planted trees over the last summer and autumn, with the distinct prospect that this will be repeated in the coming months. And even though today was a very nice day, popped up on my computer and maybe on yours that today was the hottest 17th of September on record in Perth, about 28 degrees. So it's a taste of things to come. We have the potentially massive threat of Prolificus shothole borer, about which this council has rightly given great concerns and attention. We unfortunately have a significant level of public antagonism towards urban trees that was appallingly displayed to the City Park staff recently by some residents during the verge tree planting in Shelley. And finally, we have a state government that has an absurdly low minimal planning requirement for 1 tree per residential building, and which refuses to give any support to local governments in their attempts to limit tree removal on private land. The criticality of trees on private land was highlighted 2 years ago, amongst many other people, by the current CEO of the City of Stirling, Stefan Rodic, when he was Stirling's Director of Planning and Development. Mr. Rodic said, planting trees as part of development has become widely accepted by the community in the development industry. However, 2/3 of all tree canopy cover loss in the City of Stirling has been on private land, both via development of residential properties and significant tree pruning. And so planting alone will not adequately replace the tree canopy loss. Mr. Rodic's comments relate to a concern that I have long held about Canning's urban forest strategy, since it was adopted firstly by Council in November 2019. I would love to be proven wrong, I hope I am, but I do fear that the strategy significantly underestimated the likely loss of tree canopy on private land at only an average of 1.1 hectares a year until 2039, and consequently overestimated the extent to which streetscape and public open space planting by the city might not only compensate for that loss, but also increase canopy cover to the strategy's modest target of 9.3% of the city's total area. When I think of significant trees on private property that desperately need protection but currently have none, I think of these trees on the corner of Fleming Avenue and Fern Road, Wilson, which many of you have probably driven past, beside that lovely old house. And every time I pass this property, which I did yesterday, I fear I will see a for sale sign up on the front. And I fear that because that will be almost a certain death warrant for those 2 trees. As it was for this amazing urban private forest, which I've shown before in Rossmoyne, that was absolutely destroyed this year. And another property around the same time, not very far away, more modest, beautiful mature trees. And of course, it was all gone. In this most confronting situation, it is incumbent on governments to show decisive leadership with concrete actions, not just more strategies or codes of conduct or education and awareness campaigns. We've got plenty of those. And it's in that context that I believe Council and the City Administration need to view Councillor Kunz's motion. Linking tree protection on private land to rate reductions or discounts is an innovative, bold, and some might say radical approach. But in the absence of any really effective and enforceable planning controls to protect trees on private residential land, we have to take substantial initiatives to encourage ratepayers to at least consider nominations for the significant tree register to give their trees a level of protection. The sad facts are that since the significant tree register policy was formally endorsed by Council nearly 3 years ago, there have been only 2 nominations from Canning ratepayers for trees on private land, which are only now being considered for inclusion on the register. And all of the originally proposed nominations for trees on land owned by state government agencies and other owners were not supported by those owners, so the register only now comprises trees on the city's own public open space and streetscapes. But I would go further than the rate reductions or discounts and recommend adopting a grants or reimbursement scheme that is used by at least 5 councils in Melbourne, South Australia and 2 here in Perth for private landowners with registered significant trees on their properties. Well, the schemes vary a bit. What the town of Vincent and City of Bayswater have in place seems pretty reasonable and financially responsible. In these municipalities, the owners of trees listed on their significant tree registers are eligible for financial assistance for works done on the listed trees, including remedial pruning, crown thinning, pest control or advice from a qualified arborist. Payment to the owners is through reimbursement upon presentation of a receipted invoice and certification by the arborist of the approved works. Funds are generally provided on a dollar-for-dollar basis to a maximum of $2,000 in any 5-year period, although the amount can be increased at the city's discretion. The town of Vincent requires that where the city pays more than $1,000 for work on any one tree, the owner must enter an agreement to repay the city if the tree is removed within the 5-year period and in the city's opinion, the tree could have been retained. If Councillor Kunz's motion is approved tonight, and I sincerely hope it will, these and other models will be matters for the administration to consider in its report to Council in March. And as they do so, I would urge the administration to constantly keep in the forefront of their minds the very serious and ongoing predicament of mature trees in this city that the proposed measures seek to address in a small but significant way, and to focus positively on how to bring incentives to fruition rather than look for reasons why they shouldn't be introduced. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Johnston. Moving on to item 9, applications for leave of absence. There are none. Item 10, questions by members of which due notice has been given without discussion. There are none. And item 11, items brought forward for the convenience of the public gallery. Again, there are none. So we will move on to item 12, reports of committee meetings. At item 12.1, we've got the Audit and Risk Committee meeting held on the 29th of August 2024. Councillors, the recommendation is on page 4 of the agenda and is on screen now. Can I please have a mover for this item? Councillor Kunza, thank you. And a seconder? Thank you, Councillor Sekon. Councillor Kunza.
Nothing to add, Deputy Mayor.
Councillor Sekon.
I agree with the officer's recommendation. I have nothing to add.
Thank you. Do we have any councillors wishing to speak against this officer's recommendation? No, then we'll go straight to the vote. Thank you.
The motion for item 12.1, Audit and Risk Committee recommendation from the 29th of August 24 has been carried unanimously with all 8 in favour.
Thank you, Governance. At item 13, reports. Item 13.1, Michael Littleton, the Office of the CEO. Item OC 00824, reimbursement of insurance expenses for volunteer environmental Landcare groups policy. The officer's recommendation is on page 9 of the agenda and is on screen now. Councillors, I will actually be moving an alternate recommendation which you all should have on your desks in front of you. And the alternate recommendation is that Council defer this item basically until the partnership agreement is agreed upon with the relevant environmental Landcare groups. This was also in the agenda briefing comment of the agenda as well. I'll move that from the chair. Could I get a seconder from the floor, please? Thank you, Councillor Bain. Do we have anybody? I will actually speak to it, and that I thank staff for their work on this. I think that we're all a little bit rushed and blindsided by what was actually involved. I think it's really important that we get this partnership agreement in place before it's used as a mechanism to reimburse the insurance for these groups. I don't think it's going to be an arduous process. Staff have certainly confirmed that they'll be working with each of the volunteer groups to make sure that everybody's happy. And we obviously know that the groups have already been reimbursed for the last 2 years. So there's no rush for this. We've got time, but staff have also assured me that we should definitely have this locked away by the end of the year. So I will be supporting the alternate recommendation. And Councillor Bain, would you like to speak to it?
Thank you, Deputy Mayor. I'll be supporting the alternate recommendation, deferring the item until the partnership agreement is agreed upon with the volunteer environmental Landcare groups is the prudent next step in the formulation of this policy. The groups are the ones who will be subject to the agreement, so it makes sense that they're involved in developing it. And I also note, as you did too, Deputy Mayor, that the city put this forward and is comfortable with the matter being delayed until the partnership agreement details are settled. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Bain. Do we have anybody who wishes to speak for the motion? Anyone speaking against? No, in the absence of anybody speaking against, I won't rebut any comments. So we will go straight to the vote. Thanks, councillors.
The alternate recommendation for item OC 008 of 24 has been carried unanimously with all 8 in favour.
Thank you, Governance. We now move on to item 13.2, which is Director Driscoll, Director of Corporate and Commercial. At item CC 02124, the monthly financial report for July 2024. The recommendation is on page 18 of the agenda and is on screen now. Could I get a mover for this item, please? I'm happy to move that from the chair. Can I get a seconder, please? Thank you, Councillor Page. I have nothing further to add and accept the officer's recommendation. Councillor Page, would you like to add anything?
No, I'd also support the officer's recommendation. I have nothing more to add.
Thank you, Councillor Page. Would anyone like to speak to the recommendation? Yes, Councillor Hearn.
It's taken me a very long time to get my head around the problem I have with these monthly financial reports, other than the fact they are 2 months behind. I now see tens of millions of dollars of capital expenditure is not being reported in the year it is budgeted because it's not delivered, and it is not being reported in the year it is delivered because it is not budgeted. So in each of these monthly reports, there are millions of dollars of expenditure being given a leave pass. This is not like any accounting system I've ever encountered. It does not follow Australian accounting principles in intent or principle. This has got me wondering which other expenditure at City Accounting is being given a leave pass on technicalities. This is the kind of expenditure I'd be most interested in. It is my view that this financial report is useless at best and misleading at worst. I no longer believe this monthly report meets the requirements of the local government financial management regulations to convey the city's financial position, and I won't be supporting any further monthly report adoption until I can be assured that all expenditure by City Accounting is being reported.
Director Driscoll, would you like to provide a comment?
Yeah, thank you. Through you, Deputy Mayor. I believe you're referring to the carried forward projects, the capital carried forward projects. I think, as we mentioned at the agenda briefing last week, from next month's report, we will start reporting the progression of those capital projects that have been carried forward from prior years. So you'll have full sight of the progress of the carried forward plus the current year budgeted projects. All other expenditure is reported in this report, and the report does comply with regulations.
Thank you, Director Driscoll. Councillor Hearn, your frustrations have been duly noted, and assurances have been given by staff that we will do better in future. Do I have anybody else speaking for or against this item? No, we'll go straight to the vote then.
The motion for item CC 021 of 24 has been carried by absolute majority with 7 in favour and Councillor Hearn voting against the motion.
Thank you, Governance. At item 13.3, Director Bride, the Director of Planning and Development, we have item PD 00624, the review of the planning and development policies for 2024. The recommendation is on page 55 of your agenda and is on several screens now because it's a big one. Can I get a mover for this item, please? I'm happy to move that from the chair. Could I get a seconder, please? Somebody, anybody? Thank you, Councillor Kunza. I support the officer's recommendation, and although I do condition that upon, I probably will have some more to add once we receive the results from the public advertising, but happy to get that process started. Councillor Kunza, do you have anything to add?
Just likewise, I look forward to hearing what the community feedback is on our new policies.
Thank you. Do we have any other councillors wishing to speak either for or against this item? Councillor Hearn?
I'd just like to put forward a motion to adjourn this item until the October OCM, because with 1,000 pages of reading and each of these 28 policies being new to me, I feel like I'd like to spend some more time looking at the detail and understanding the context before I make a decision on this.
So am I correct in saying you'd like to move a procedural motion to defer this?
Yes.
Yes, to the which meeting, sorry?
October.
October meeting. Do I
16th.
have a seconder for the motion to defer? No, in the absence of a seconder, sorry, Councillor Hearn, we will go back to the original officer's recommendation. Do I have anybody else who would like to speak either for or against? No, in the absence of anybody speaking against this item, we will go straight to the vote. Thank you.
The motion for item PD 006 of 24 has been carried with 7 in favour and Councillor Hearn voting against the motion.
Thank you, Governance. We now move on to item PD 00724, the appointment of members to the City of Canning Design and Review Panel, also under the Directorate of Director Bride. Can I get, the recommendation is on page 74 of the agenda and is on the screen now. Can I get a mover for this item, please? Councillor Bain, I saw your hand first, and Councillor Page, happy to second. Thank you. Councillor Bain.
Thank you, Deputy Mayor. I support the officer's recommendation and thank all the candidates for putting themselves forward for positions on the panel. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Bain. Councillor Page.
Yes, I also support the officer's recommendation and very pleased we had quite a few qualified candidates that went for these positions.
Thank you. Do we have anybody wishing to speak either for or against this recommendation? No, then we'll go straight to the vote. Thanks, councillors.
The motion for PD 007 of 24 has been carried unanimously with all 8 in favour.
Thank you, Governance. Moving on to item 13.4, under Director Bo, Director of Infrastructure and Environment, we've got item IE 01924, which is tender 11/2024 for the Queen's Park open space construction. The officer's recommendation is on page 80 of the agenda and is on screen now. Councillors, can I get a mover for this item, please? Councillor Kunza, thank you. A seconder? Councillor Sekon? Councillor Kunza.
Thank you, Deputy Mayor. Look, I agree with the officer's recommendation. I know this has been a project, whilst it's slightly different to what's been discussed for the last 10 years, has been something the city's been working towards for a very long time. And I hope that it meets the community expectations, and I hope it's a thriving success, and I hope that everything goes well. And it's a new future for that community within Queen's Park and anyone that visits it. So I look forward to seeing the final product.
Thank you, Councillor Kunzo. Councillor Secon?
I agree with the officer's recommendation and I have nothing to add. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Secon. Does any councillors wish to speak either for or against this item? Councillor Hearn?
So there are 3 infrastructure projects people will associate with my tenure on council: the Metronet, Bentley Redevelopment and Marniana Reserve. This is significant infrastructure investment for Mason Ward. It is difficult to recall the last time Mason Ward received this level of investment in public open spaces. Indeed, it is a very sizable public open spaces investment for the City of Canning. When I ran in the election last year, I ran on a platform of strong advocacy. I am the voice of the people who elected me on council. So to say I am stinky about the progression of this planning is a gross understatement. I am quite furious. When plans were being finalised and taken to tender, I heard absolutely nothing from the city officers. I was not advised the tender had been issued. Sure, if I follow the tender advertisements in the paper, I may have been aware. As a mum of young children, reading tender advertisements is not one of my hobbies. The first time I saw the plans was when the tender had been issued, tender responses had been received and evaluated several weeks ago. The committee hasn't been insulted for almost 4 years, and at that time, although it appeared that to be through multiple avenues, it appeared to reach a very small number of people. I don't recall anything about it, and I was local at the time. When I met with CEO Willetton at the end of July and we discussed options for the Marniana public open space, it was not mentioned that the tender had already been issued. When the annual budget planning was underway and I asked about the capital expenditure program for the next few years, with expenditure listed for Marniana public open space, it was not mentioned that the tender had already been released. From where I'm sitting, it seems to me that the plans and tender issuance have potentially even been obfuscated from my knowledge until it is too far advanced to have any influence, which is what I was elected by the voters of Mason Ward to do. To the city operating this way, I say no, and to this motion, I say no. Please take this plan back to our community in an accessible and easily, more widely accessible way to respond. If our community is happy with the design, bring this tender back to me for adoption.
Councillor Hearn, I feel like I need to maybe point you to item 5 in the report. This plan was endorsed by council at the ordinary meeting of November 2020. This hasn't just happened overnight. This has been a very long process. And you'll find that projects of this size don't happen overnight. They do often take several years. Unfortunately, when I got elected to council, I inherited the Shelley Beach Park master plan, which had been ongoing for about 20 years. So although I sympathise with your frustrations, this is nothing new and this is certainly nothing personal. So please understand that this unfortunately is a slow process, and as frustrating as it is, sometimes it is just what it is. But there's certainly, I can sit here with my hand on my heart and say there's certainly nothing that staff have done to create the frustration that you're feeling. The market is what it is, and we can only do so much. So I just feel like I needed to say that. And Mr. CEO, would you like to add to that?
Yeah, thank you, Deputy Mayor. Look, certainly the frustration you're feeling, Councillor Hearn, is understood, although it would have been appreciated if you could have identified and had a conversation with us through this process. We did brief council on the outcomes of the tender. There was and has been ample opportunity to come and talk to us about those frustrations throughout this process. I would add that not only was the master plan endorsed by council in 2000, $5.3 million was part of an election commitment by the federal government that has been that has underpinned the delivery of this project, and the funding agreement that we were required to sign and execute actually articulated the deliverables for the project. So our ability to de-scope or rescope this project is very limited. We actually had intended and initially tendered the work in 2022 so that after the federal government election commitment had been announced, there was an expectation that this project would be delivered at the same time as the Sam Kerr Football Centre. It is an integrated project where the revegetation works adjacent to the Sam Kerr Football Centre actually framed to some extent Maniana Park redevelopment. So this project has been some time in gestation before my time on the city, and I appreciate before yours. However, our obligation to satisfy the $5.3 million funding contribution provided by the federal government gives us very little scope to change the deliverables from what, as I understand it, was considerably consulted through to 2020 when Council made its decision to endorse the master plan.
Thank you, CEO Littleton. Do I have any other councillors wishing to speak either for or against this item? No? Well then let's go to the vote. Thank you, councillors.
The motion for item IE 019 Apologies. The motion for item IE 019 of 24 has been carried with 7 in favour and Councillor Hearn voting against the motion.
Thank you, Governance. We now move on to item 13.5, where Mr Ellis, Acting Director for Customer and Community. We've got item C00724, the DLGSC, Community Sporting and Recreation Facilities Fund grant applications at Wyong Reserve Sports Facilities. The recommendation is on page 102 of the agenda and is on screen now. Councillors, can I get a mover for this item, please? Councillor Bain, and a seconder. Councillor Hearn. Councillor Bain.
Thank you, Deputy Mayor. Yes, I support the officer's recommendation and the city's efforts through the CSRFF Forward Grants Program to upgrade the sporting facilities at Wyong Reserve. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Bain. Councillor Hearn.
I looked forward to seeing these grants received and having this level of investment in our side of the city, and I look forward to some great communication from the city officers about the progression of this project.
I'm sorry, Councillor Hearn, I just have to again say, this is now the second time you've implied that your ward has been underinvested. I have to say that's all councillors feel that way, but I can certainly say that certainly my time on council, the Mason ward has received a lot of funding in a lot of areas, and I just have to almost caution you on your choice of words here, because the implications that you're making are a little bit incorrect. And I think if you actually go back and look at over the council decisions over the last 5 years, you might realise that if it hasn't been fair, it certainly hasn't been at the detriment of the Mason ward. Councillors, do I have, sorry, yeah, no, you seconded it. Do I have anybody else wishing to speak either for or against this item? No, in the absence of anybody speaking against, we'll go to the vote.
The motion for item CO007-24 has been carried unanimously with all 8 in favour.
Thank you, Governance. We'll now move on to CO00824, the DLGSC Club Night Lights Program at the Willetton Reserve Sports Lighting. Councillor Secon has declared an impartiality interest in this item. An impartiality interest allows the councillor to remain in the room and participate in debate and also vote on the matter. Councillors, the recommendation is on page 102 of the agenda and is on screen now. Do I have a mover for this item? Councillor Tuchek. Do I have a seconder? Councillor Secon. Councillor Tuchek.
I will be supporting the officer's recommendation, and I look forward to lighting up Willetton in the very near future. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Chuchek. Councillor Secon.
We look forward to this investment in the Willetton precinct. Hopefully the city will be successful in their grant application via CSRFF.
Thank you very much. And I will say from the chair that I'm very happy also that this is going up for the grant funding, and also that the Bannister portion of Willetton is getting these lights too. So do I have any other councillors who would like to speak either for or against this item? No? In the absence of anyone speaking against, we'll go straight to the vote. Thank you.
The motion for item CO 00824 has been carried unanimously with all 8 in favour.
Thank you, Governance. We are on the home stretch, councillors, at item 14, motions of which previous notice has been given. We've got a notice of motion from Councillor Kunza. The notice of motion is on page 108 of the agenda and is on screen now. Councillor Kunza, I assume you'd like to move that from from your chair. Do I have anybody who'd like to second this? Councillor Page. Councillor Kunza, the floor is yours.
Thank you, Deputy Mayor. Look, I'd like to start off by thanking Stephen Johnston for his fantastic deputation in support of this notice of motion. And I concur with everything he put forward. As we all know, the City of Canning and its community is investing millions of dollars to plant approximately 60,000 trees over 10 years in order to improve our level of tree canopy cover. And we know that the City of Canning ranks in the bottom 3 with respect to the level of tree canopy cover in the Perth metropolitan area. Now, the original aim of the urban forest strategy, when it was first developed 5 years ago, was to cost over $40 million to implement. It's since been re-scoped. However, despite this level of investment, as Mr. Johnston pointed out, it was envisaged that we would only increase our level of tree canopy cover to approximately 9.3% from 7.6%. And many local governments, including Wyong, who's promoting initiatives, are looking at 30% of tree canopy cover. Perth currently has 16% of tree canopy cover, and our aim is 9.3%. And we're predicted to lose, and this might be argued, but we're predicted to lose 28 hectares of canopy cover on freehold land, on private land. And to replace that, our aim is to invest into new trees on Crown and Canning land, but all the heavy lifting is being done on our land and, to a lesser degree, Crown land. Now, some of you were here when we adopted our significant tree register. I'd just like to point out with the significant tree register that it actually has some teeth. It comes within the planning framework. It sits within LPS 42. And it's not just a policy which provides some sort of direction. Trees that are registered on the significant tree register are actually protected and embedded within the planning framework. Now, it also doesn't cover every single tree on private land or public land. These trees are extraordinary trees. They're significant trees. Now, in order to get onto the register, an application has to come in. They're assessed by City of Canning Greening team, and then an arborist will go out and look at it, and it has to meet criteria. They have to have exceptional characteristics that make them highly valuable and worthy of being afforded a greater level of protection. Now, sometime this year, the City of Canning formally adopted the Helliwell system. We don't just look at trees based on their replacement costs. We can now look at a tree's value on a number of different criteria. We can put a proper value on trees. And that's because when you replace a tree of significance, if we value it at $60,000, it's probably because it took decades to grow and it's going to take decades to replace, and we don't have that time. But it's come patently clear, as Mr. Johnston pointed out in his deputation, that we need a financial instrument. Although it's been several years since we adopted the significant tree register, we've only just got 2 applications to actually protect trees on private property. Now, I believe if we can develop a financial incentive, such as a rate reduction, maybe with a cap, that the community will be investing into protecting these trees. Instead of spending thousands of dollars planting new trees and hoping that they thrive and hoping that in several decades we'll have an urban tree canopy cover that Canning can be proud of, the community is investing into protecting these trees right now. Now, people always talk about budget impacts. It actually won't really have a budget impact because it'll be absorbed into what everyone else pays. The community will literally be paying through their rates to give someone else a rate reduction. Local government doesn't work on finding out how much money we have to spend and then putting our expenditure accordingly. We work out how much we want to spend and then set our rates to fund that. And by giving a small proportion, potentially, I'm not sure how this would end up, of ratepayers a rate reduction of some description and absorb that into the 40-odd thousand ratepayers we have, I don't think that is too much of an impost on them. Now, often with these discussions comes private property rights. Now, the great thing about our significant tree register, it's a voluntary system. A lot of discussion comes on protecting trees on private property. It's about impinging or affecting people's private property rights and the capacity to do with what they want with their private land. Well, this system is voluntary. When somebody puts an application to protect a tree on their private property, Deputy Mayor, may I request extra time?
Yes.
Thanks. When people submit an application to put a tree on their private property onto the significant tree register, they do so voluntarily. The issue, though, is it always comes down to money. As I included in my reasoning, there's been a high-profile case in the city of Fremantle where they actually created their significant tree register in 2009, and a 130-year-old Moreton Bay fig tree was placed onto that. If you see it in a photo, if you're driving past High Street, it's a phenomenal tree. But the owners have requested to remove that tree from the significant tree register because they're concerned with the financial impact that they will have when they are seeking to sell the property, which they're currently in the process of doing. By providing a financial incentive to protect these trees, the City of Canning will at some point, a future council, if a development application comes in to remove that tree off the significant tree register as it has in Fremantle, that future council will be able to say, well, you've received X amount of funds from the Canning ratepayers over the amount of years, and that's been a level of investment into that tree to protect that tree. And you've not been financially impacted, you've actually financially benefited, and you have made that decision, conscious decision to do so, and the City of Canning has financially remunerated it for you. To be able to actually have a financial story to tell, that's quite powerful, and it can't just be about the environment, unfortunately. I wish it could be. On the East Coast in Melbourne and Brisbane, it is just about the environment. However, it's clear we need a financial mechanism in order to incentivise people to put their trees on the register. And people that buy that property in the future, they will also have the decision about whether they want to buy that property because they will be aware that this tree is on the significant tree register. This isn't a mechanism or an authoritative policy where we come across private property and say what you can and can't do and you can't clear this tree. We're asking people to voluntarily put these trees on the significant tree register, and if they do, we will give them some sort of financial incentive to do it. But for tonight's meeting, lastly, I just want to point out this is simply requesting a report to be produced by the officers that will come in March, and I hope that it's able to come up with some good potential scenarios in which we can attract private property owners in the City of Canning to place more protections, formal protections on the trees on their property. And I ask Council for your support. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Kunze. Councillor Page?
I think you covered every aspect of it, but I would say it is just a report into potential financial incentives, so whether that is a rate reduction or arborist grants, because a lot of people maybe have a significant tree and find the maintenance of it maybe too financially burdensome and might benefit from grants to actually keep the significant tree rather than just cutting it down, because then it's just a one-time cost. instead of an ongoing cost. So I'd be interested to see the report that the city comes up with.
Thank you, Councillor Page. Would anybody else like to speak either for or against this notice of motion? No, I'd just like to say thank you, Councillor Kunza, for presenting this notice of motion. While I wish it went further, it's certainly a start, and I think that the more councils that do things like this, it's quite disappointing that there's only two, but let's hope that we could potentially be the third. I would really like to see more support from the state government. Unfortunately, in recent conversations, that doesn't look like that's going to happen. I would also really like to see developer incentives where if developers do actually plan buildings around trees rather than just taking the cheap and easy way of removing the trees, whether it be, you know, we're a little bit more relaxed on our codes and compliance issues to retain trees. That's an extra step that I'd like to see, and I think we can probably maybe talk about that with the tree retention on private land policy that's going out for advertising shortly. I'd also like to thank Mr. Johnston for coming down and giving us your valuable advice and opinion as well. And councillors, I also hope that you support this notice of motion, and I look forward to seeing the report in March. In the absence of anyone speaking against, Councillor Kunza, we won't get you to close, so we'll just go straight to the vote. Thanks, councillors.
The notice of motion for NOM 010 of 24 has been carried unanimously with all 8 in favour.
Thank you, Governance. At item 15 being urgent business, there is none. At item 16 being confidential matters, there are none. So we now go to item 17, which is closure. There being no further business, I now declare the meeting closed at 6:52 p.m. and I would like to thank everybody for their attendance this evening. Thank you very much.